910 Big 550 KTRS. Some of you headed down to Atlanta for the SEC championship game. We got a call yesterday from Chris Koster's people saying that there's a ticket scam going on. So we wanted to get the information. We're going straight to the top man, Missouri Attorney General Chris Koster. Good morning, Mr. Koster. Welcome back to Big 550 KTRS.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. First, let's talk about this ticket scam. What are you seeing?
Well, what we're trying to do is just make consumers and Missouri Tiger fans, not Auburn Tiger fans, but Missouri Tiger fans aware of the possibility that you can deal with unsavory characters as you're moving toward kickoff. So be on the lookout for counterfeit tickets. Be on the lookout for things that may be duplicate tickets where they essentially are selling the same seats over and over again. It's more risky to buy tickets on Craigslist or eBay, of course, than it is to go to a noted vendor like Ticketmaster or StubHub or the universities themselves, so that there is a business entity and a known entity that you can go to in case something goes wrong. We're really just trying to say to folks, be aware of your surroundings and make sure that you use good common sense as you're moving toward the Georgia Dome.
Is it against the law, Chris Koster, if I were to sell the same ticket over and over again?
Of course it is. That's consumer fraud.
Because
407 of the Missouri statutes.
Because why? Because I'm saying that this is an actual seat for a game?
Are you well, I may have misperceived your question. I interpreted it as making copies of seats 1 and 2 and then selling them over and over again.
Right, yeah.
Sure, that would be consumer fraud.
Yeah.
I mean, you can sell the same ticket over again as long as there's only a single ticket for that seat, but to duplicate the tickets is counterfeit.
Right, I understand that, but I mean, at some point the buyer has to be at least cognizant of the fact that, hey, when does buyer beware come into effect in all this?
I think buyer beware comes in pretty closely after you move into that secondary market on the first resale. We used to deal with this there's been a lot of movement on this policy-wise around the country over the last 10 years, and an acceptance that there is a secondary ticket market out there where there are known entities like Ticketmaster and particularly StubHub,
right.
But it's a very unregulated market, and it's always going to be an unregulated market. And once you walk into that market, if you're on Craigslist or eBay, you are in a pure buyer beware situation at that point.
Right, I understand that. But, I mean, if someone's trying to sell you a piece of paper that has a barcode on it that says, hey, this is good for tonight's game, you should be leery to start with, should you not?
I think you should be very leery.
Yeah.
Right. It is a completely unregulated Wild West universe once you get outside of the primary ticket market. Now, StubHub has created what appears to be a reliable secondary market, but you can't carry that trust over to Craigslist.
Right. All right, so you're telling us just be aware and be smart.
Be aware, be smart, and bring home a winning game.
All right, that's one. Have you announced you're running for governor yet?
Haven't announced yet. I think that kind of a decision is finalized probably in 2015. I'm spending part of my time, obviously, moving around the state, meeting with citizens, stakeholders, talking about issues, and building a consensus at this point. But I don't think a formal announcement is necessary for probably a year and a half.
You once were a Republican and left that and became a Democrat. Why did you do that?
I think that I would probably have been described as a somewhat socially progressive, fiscally conservative Republican back in the day, but that animal doesn't exist anymore in the Republican Party. It does exist, however, in the Democratic Party. The conservative Democratic model, which is the model that Governor Nixon, I think, has been operating on and has historically been a model here in the state of Missouri, is one where you can be fiscally conservative, but also recognize that the government doesn't need to get involved in people's personal lives. And so stem cell research I filibustered the stem cell research effort the Republicans tried to criminalize stem cell research in 2005. I filibustered that bill because I thought it was bad for the state of Missouri. I thought people were putting ideology over party, but paid a very high price for that move.
Are you watching what's going on with this Boeing story these last couple of days? What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are that it's an exciting opportunity, and I certainly want Governor Nixon and the legislature in a bipartisan way to be successful here. But long term, we are in an arms race between the states. and all the states are spending. We spend like 2.5 to 3% of all state and local government spending is dedicated toward moving businesses around the country, and at some level, it is a zero-sum game. We're all trapped in a prisoner's dilemma. The states cannot disengage. Any state that lays down their economic development arms is just going to get cannibalized like a piranha. So you have to stay active. But in the macro sense, I'm concerned that it's nationally a zero-sum game. That having been said, I want to win this contest, and I'm pleased that Governor Nixon is on the battlefield.
Yeah. You have another execution coming up here shortly, don't you?
We do, December 11th. So that would be the second one this year. And I think that after the Joseph Franklin execution that occurred a couple of weeks ago, which was an extraordinary evening, we went through every level of the federal judiciary between midnight and 6 a.m., including a decision from the U.S. Supreme Court. I think that we have got this pentobarbital issue ironed out pretty well, and so hopefully this December 11th situation will go more smoothly than the Franklin one.
Here's a stupid question for you, Attorney General Chris Koster. Why not use the Jack Kevorkian method of assisted suicide? He would argue that was a very peaceful way to assist someone in the end of their life. Why not use that for the execution method?
Well, I think that the methods, the Supreme Court, the federal judiciary scrutinizes this extremely closely to the point where even the pinprick to set the lines in the arm and the possibility that the drugs create localized pain at the point of injection is scrutinized for undue pain and suffering under the Constitution. So I think that, what I think you would see is that if the Kevorkian method were adopted by a state, that it would be scrutinized beyond the point that it has ever been scrutinized before, and it would receive the same treatment that pentobarbital and propofol and others have received in the federal judiciary.
So you're saying people make a stink over the pain of a needle going into an arm. So
I'm not going to adopt the language of you make a stink over it. Everybody who's bringing these claims in the court has a legal argument that is theirs to pursue. But I think that in the general sense of the term, this is receiving an absolutely the highest level of scrutiny, and perhaps more than is generally thought to be necessary.
Missouri has slowed down in their executions for obvious reasons because of all of these court cases. Now that things are back on track, take me through the 2014, 2015. Are we going to start seeing more of these on a regular basis?
It's hard to predict. The Missouri Supreme Court has an important role to play here. They are the entity that sets the execution dates. But now that there is an execution protocol, this pentobarbital methodology, and we have a supplier that will work with the Department of Corrections, and it seems to be a supply that will not be interrupted, there's no obvious reason why the Supreme Court will not be setting execution dates on a fairly regular basis. There are 56, 57 individuals on death row. We have asked for execution dates on 18 of them. 2 have been granted. It is conceivable that we could see a process where every couple of months the Supreme Court would move forward on another individual on death row.
Gotcha. Last question for you, Attorney General Chris Koster. Some news recently in the state when Governor Nixon announced that same-sex couples would be allowed to file a state tax return here in Missouri, saying he's just following state law. You also said that he's just sort of following state law, right? That was the only decision he could make.
Right. We have the General Assembly has passed a statute that says that the filing status that is adopted by the feds shall be the filing status that is utilized here in the state. And so when the IRS decided that same-sex joint filing status would be adopted at the federal level, Missouri law moved in lockstep. Governor Nixon's executive order from a couple of weeks ago is really an acknowledgement of existing state law, and some of the legislators have asked us to step in and say that it violates the Missouri Constitution, Article 1, Section 33. But it is not you have to remember the Attorney General's role. The Attorney General is not an entity that tries to go declare state laws unconstitutional. Our job is to defend state law against unconstitutional allegations, and not to presume that the very General Assembly that I'm looking out the window at and can see across the street, that the acts of the General Assembly are themselves unconstitutional. It would be a chaotic situation if an Attorney General started to declare acts of the General Assembly unconstitutional.
Right, and it's not like Governor Nixon declared same-sex marriages legal. All he said is that same-sex couples can file jointly.
Right. Article 1, Section 33 says to be valid and recognized, a marriage has to be between a man and a woman. It does not say that to be valid and recognized, a tax return has to be between a man and a woman.
Right.
A tax return is different than a marriage, and the General Assembly certainly has an avenue to address the situation if they disagree.
Are you in favor of same-sex marriages?
As Attorney General, I have a sworn duty to uphold the Constitution and defend the Article 1, Section 33, as we did in Glossop versus Missouri. But if you ask me personally, if you ask me as a person and not as Attorney General, yes.
Yes, you are in favor of same-sex marriage.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is Attorney General Chris Koster. He says beware of ticket scammers in Atlanta and on your way down to Atlanta for the SEC championship game. Mr. Koster, thank you for your time. As always, talk to you down the road.
Bye-bye.
You got it. 9:21 here on the Big 550 KTR.